Hello to all the listeners. Today we have with us Mr. Sandeep Sahu. He is a journalist and the author of the book Madam President. Sir, welcome on the show.
Thank you.
While you were writing the book, was there anything in particular that inspired you?
Yes, the one thing that I didn't know before I started researching for the book was everybody knows about the fact that she refused to give consent to two amendment bills that the Jharkhand government had passed in the assembly and which were widely believed to be antithetical to the interests of tribals. Many people apprehended that once those bills went through, tribals will lose control over their land. And I came to know during my research in Ranchi that at one point of time when she was under tremendous pressure, both from the Jharkhand government and from the central government to give assent to this two amendment bills, she had even contemplated resigning from the post of governor if it came to that, if push came to shove. And this was told to me by the person who should be knowing the truth. He was the principal secretary to the governor at the time. And he told me, I saw Madam very tense and very upset for 3 consecutive days. And on the third day, I asked her, Ma'am, why are you so worried? Why do you look so tense? And she apparently replied that if they force me, then I'll have no choice but to resign. At a time when governors are going out of their way to do the bidding of the central government, a governor contemplating resignation to on an issue on a matter of principle and listening to her inner voice, that I think revealed a new side to her. And suddenly all those nasty comments about her becoming a rubber stamp and no more than a stooge at the hands of the BJP leadership, all those things started sounding so hollow after I came to know about this. That was the one thing that really opened up a new facet to her personality and character for me.
That is a great story, and of course, it comes down to representation and what you can do for the society is only when you know about it and you belong to it. So, relating to that, the tribal community is egalitarian when it comes to whether a girl child is born or a boy child is born, and many a times even girl children are celebrated. So, what other aspects of the tribal community do you think should come forth so as to reduce the stigma against them?
In fact, the other thing that we should all take note of and emulate is their love for nature. Their love for nature and the ability and the desire to live in harmony with the nature, which has sustained them over centuries. And tribals, as you know, they worship the nature, the land, the forests, the streams, the mountains. Those are their gods. So the importance of nature and living with nature, that is integral to the tribal way of life, and that is one thing we should take lessons from and try to emulate them in our daily life.
All right. And in one of the chapters called The Tragic Turn, you have shown her going through a tumultuous phase in her life, but she has unflinching faith, which is what gets her through it. But you also mentioned that she always makes space for other religions as well. Could you talk a little bit about how she's able to maintain that balance and how it has helped her by far?
Yes, she has managed the unthinkable by staying true to her tribal roots and at the same time being a proud Hindu, being a proud Prajapita Brahmakumari follower, being a proud follower of all other regions. And she has combined the best of every religion in her own life. And despite being a member of the BJP, which has always pushed the Hindutva agenda, she has had no such problems with other religions, including Islam and Christianity. And she is perfectly at home at all kinds of religious gatherings. When she was governor, she used to attend, go to the churches and mazars and temples, all of them. And at the same time, she also visited the Jahirs, which is the religious place of the tribals, the Santals. So she has combined the best of everything that has certainly helped her get a greater acceptance among people, but it has also laid her open to the charge of not being a true representative of tribals. Some of them feel that she has not been faithful to her tribal roots because she has been flaunting her Hindu credentials at various times in her life. So it has, but personally, if you ask me, I will say she combines the best of Indian ethos by taking the best out of every religion, respecting every religion, and staying true to the tenets of all religions.
Right. And you also mention, you explain her nomination as a presidential candidate as a masterstroke. Could you elaborate as to why you think that is and how it was significant?
There were two aspects actually. One was the political aspect, and I think you'd agree in that by nominating Draupadi Murmu as the presidential candidate, the BJP and NDA, they drove a wedge through the opposition. The opposition, which was trying to come together ahead of the election, it created sharp differences among opposition parties because no party wanted to oppose her candidate because they didn't want to be seen as anti-tribal. That made it difficult for them to oppose her candidature because there are, especially in states where there is a sizable tribal population, they found it very difficult to oppose her. In that sense, it was a master strategy by the BJP because it put the opposition in complete disarray. You saw in Maharashtra the fight between the Uddhav Thackeray faction and the Shinde faction was at the peak at the time, and yet both factions decided ended up supporting Draupadi Murmu's candidature because even Thackeray realized that if we don't support it, then my MPs will all cross over to the other side. Similar things happened in most other states like Andhra Pradesh, like even in Odisha, the BJP and BJD both voted for. In fact, the BJD took the lead in garnering support for Draupadi Murmu. So, in that sense, it was a master political strategy. But at a more serious level, it was also an important milestone in the evolution of India as a republic. The republican character of the country, I think, got a huge fillip by her nomination as the presidential candidate. Something that had never happened in 75 years of independence happened in this case, and that was, I think, a perfect way of celebrating the Amrit Kal, or that the NDA government is celebrating. In both senses, I think it was a very good strategy, and it raised the image of India as a republic, as a democracy, and that, I think, was a big achievement for the country.
And another reason why I think it was very significant is because of her identity as a person who comes from the tribal communities, right? And you end
Yes.
the book also with the chapter called Cautious Optimism, in which you discuss the nuances that are attached with it, where it is a good thing that she has been appointed being a person from the tribal communities. But what do you think it does for the community itself?
In fact, the little that I know about the Constitution, whatever little I have read, it tells me though the president of India is largely an ornamental post, which doesn't really have many powers to do things. But when it comes to protecting the interests of the tribals, I think the president has some powers. It doesn't have to depend on the president, doesn't need to depend on the central government to exercise those powers. Like, the president can ask the state government for a report on why provisions in the constitution and in other acts aimed at protecting the interests of the tribals have not been followed, and the state governments are duty bound to reply to the president. The central government doesn't come into the picture at all. So that is one power that no president has exercised before. But I expect Draupadi Murmu to make use of that provision in the constitution to ensure that the interests of tribals, their culture, their language, their religion are protected, and the provisions made in the constitution for their protection are observed. So that is one thing that she certainly can do as a president.
And as you mentioned, she is from Odisha. And what does her nomination and becoming the president will do for the state itself?
You must have noticed that I have devoted a whole chapter titled
Mhm.
Odisha's Finest Hour, and traced Odisha's journey from the ancient times to the present state, and which shows how Odisha used to be a land of plenty, a land of conversations of all kinds of religious beliefs and thoughts. I think one of the most tolerant societies in the whole of the country, which has welcomed all shades of opinion, which has welcomed all shades religious strands and assimilated them in their life. Buddhism flourished here, Jainism flourished here, Hinduism flourished here, everything. And how post independence it somehow fell off the radar and never quite got the attention that it deserved. And President Mu's nomination as the president has suddenly focused the spotlight on Odisha, and people are interested to know more about Odisha, and it has given an opportunity for the media, for writers like me, and for others to focus on Odisha and make Indians in general more aware of a state had such a rich cultural history, religious history, but has somehow only invited attention when there have been starvation deaths, when there have been some large floods or cyclones. That is the only time when Odisha gets some national attention. But there is so much to admire, so much to be proud about in Odisha's history and culture and the language. Let me tell you, Odia is, many Indians perhaps don't know that Odia is one of only six languages, Indian languages, which has got the classical status. And the classical status is given to a language which has a history of at least 1500 years. So that gives you an idea about the antiquity of the state and its culture. And there are rock edicts from the Kalinga war area, which was before Christ, 300 BC, 3rd century BC, when the Kalinga war took place. That was the time when the rock edicts on the outskirts of Bhubaneswar in Dhaudi were carved. And a state which has such a proud and rich history, how it went into oblivion, that has been one thing that has always exercised my mind. And I thought that President Draupadi Murmu's nomination as the president has done wonders for the state, in the sense that everybody is now interested to know more about the state. That is one positive fallout that has taken place after she was nominated the president's candidate.